Welcome back, everyone, for the latest edition of Open World Chat. I am your host, John Odom, and I'm here with your host, Mark Card. Mark, tell us how you're doing.
I'm doing all right. I've had a bit of a plumbing problem at the house, but it's under control for the moment. So, um,
By which you mean literal plumbing and not your
no,
gastrointestinal
no,
system.
no, no, not my anatomical plumbing, the plumbing in the house. So, uh,
I don't know which is worse. Guess it depends.
we had a bit of minor flooding, and it's under control for the moment. But let's just say that I didn't get to see any fireworks for the 4th of July. Rather, I got waterworks.
Let's just say. All right. Well, we're going to continue in our now three-part series, and I think this is as far as we're going is three parts, where we discuss what we think from our varied perspectives here, what the reaction would be in our world to real first contact if the aliens actually do show up. Not doing this in service to any plot that or story we want to tell, but just stepping back and just doing some speculation.
Yeah,
Mark,
kind of
why
an
don't you lead us into what we're going to talk about this time around?
Sure. This kind of actually touches on my professional background. And one of the things that I thought about immediately was what would happen to the international system if we have an outside power that's at least kind of nominally superior to us in some way. I mean, obviously, they're probably technologically superior to us, at least in the terms that they would be able to travel in an interstellar way. That means they would have found some kind of loophole in physics at the very least to travel great distances in short amounts of time. That requires a pretty big technological leap compared to the kind of technology we have now. When I talk about the international system, I'm talking about something which is kind of has a technical definition. And this goes back to kind of a way to understand the interaction between nation states at a higher level than just looking at it as the sum of its parts. And so part of this is driven by the um, desire to apply stricter um, scientific standards to the study of human behavior. I'm not going to get into a debate about this, but in general, it's important to understand science is a method for understanding all kinds of different natural phenomena. And uh, despite the fact that humans want to consider themselves outside natural phenomena, human behavior is certainly something you can apply the scientific method to. So one of the things that political scientists, starting as early as the 1920s, wanted to do was try to understand the interaction between nation states in a more scientific way. And one of the kinds of vectors they approached this idea with was to compare it to biology. And so in biology, you have the idea that the body isn't just simply a functioning of individual organisms, brain, skin, liver, digestive tract, endocrine system, all that stuff, but that it worked as a system which was more than the sum of its parts.
Mhm.
So instead of just understanding how one country or a number of countries work with each other, they assumed and then set out to demonstrate whether or not this was true, that the system, that the international interaction between countries is a system. That is, it tends to distribute power in a certain way, and how power is distributed makes a difference in how these individual, I mean, in how the system works uh, as a whole. So, you can look at this thing in this way. Like currently, we live in a system where the United States is the only global superpower. Now, the Chinese might argue with that, but until they have a capability of projecting their power like we do with 11 aircraft carriers compared to their one or two. They they have an important presence and they are a rising power in the system. But in terms of overall influence on how power is distributed and used, the United States is the only superpower. That wasn't always the case.
Mhm.
Basically from 1945 on through 1991, we had this system where you had two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Before World War One, we had what was called a multipolar power system, where you had arguably seven great powers. And so, how many actors there are and how power is distributed can have an effect on how that system operates. Whether or not you have lots of war in the system, whether or not you have um, economic prosperity throughout the system, whether or not the economy is a merely set of regional economies, or if you have a global economy.
Mhm.
And so the distribution and how well you can use that power has an effect on the operation, not just of the countries in that system, but the system as a whole. And so the question that I have when we start talking about this, what happens when you get some outsiders that are obviously more powerful? And boy, you get into a really big debate when you talk about the definition of power. But
Oh boy, that's true.
yeah, I mean that's something that's going on in in the study of domestic and international politics still. I mean,
Oh, sure. I used to be a social anarchist when I was a kid, so there you go. I've had
and
that
so, I mean,
conversation a lot.
as an example, there's a difference between hard power and soft power. Coca-Cola is a great example of soft power. It used to be that Coca-Cola had the trademark on their product in every country in the world except one. And just the idea that Coca-Cola is a symbol of American power because it's available all over the entire globe shows just how deep and pervasive the American model of economics is.
Yeah.
It's arguable that Coca-Cola is one of the most powerful companies in the world just by its domination in the market.
The poor
It's
Slav version looking at this that I love about this and why I think it's such an interesting conversation to have is, there are systems and there are systems. We create and control, internal combustion systems to make our cars run. But the political system, you can't argue that there are major levers that we have that we can consciously pull as a culture, institutional levers that have, repercussions, that can spread across the entire system, but it's also truly an ecosystem.
no,
It lives
yeah,
somewhat on it's self-sustaining in ways that we don't have full control over.
right.
That
And,
makes it really
and
interesting.
but one of the, yeah, that's right. And that's the whole point of trying to understand the international system as an actual system beyond the behavior of individual states.
Right
The
on.
behavior of individual states interact to create a different thing altogether.
Right. Or individual corporations. I got to say that because of the social anarchist background.
Well,
Never
sure,
forget.
but but
Multinationals, transnational corporations. There you go.
But
That's
keep
what I was
but
looking
keep in mind, almost every transnational, because they don't have enough money to operate day to day all the time, relies on, for example, central banks establishing interest rates.
Yes.
And so, uh, uh, economic levers are one of the most important ways that government has a method, has a vector, and gosh, I've used that twice now in this conversation, has a vector to manipulate private power. Is, oh, Well, you're a multinational corporation. Our private bank, I mean, our government bank is going to set the interest rate at 60%.
Yeah.
Oops. Now you can't afford to do business at all.
And I think folks like us would say there's a moral imperative to use those levers that government provides. Because if you don't use them, then the opposite happens and the government itself gets used the other direction.
Right. And so, but you're right in that most actors in this system don't even understand that it's a system,
Hmm.
that it's more than the sum reaction of its parts. And so, arguably, the politicians and the moral leaders and the corporate leaders rise to the top because they learn this idea and begin to conceive of the system as a system itself and start looking for those levers to manipulate it.
There are so many questions I'd like to ask you to get your opinion on in this regard, but
We
I
don't have
don't want
time
to
for
make
that.
us I don't want to make us go crazy here. So let's just then, put out there that if aliens show up, they aren't just walking into some situation where there's like the conspiracy theory idea, there's a cabal that's actually running the world, and you're just going to have to talk to the people with their hands on the buttons. They're walking into a true web of interdependence and interactivity. So
That
they're stepping in it big time.
Yeah, and as we talked about the last time, chances are they have some idea of what that system is and how it works because we're emanating so many electromagnetic signals, uh, TV, radio. The interesting thing about the internet is that in some ways it is both an open and closed loop. For you to get into the internet, you're going to have to find a way to get into the encrypted Wi-Fi that we have, but we're still emanating signals over broadcast airwaves, and they would have some kind of idea how it works. The problem is, because of physics, their understanding when they leave to come here will be very different than what the system actually looks like when they get here
Hmm.
because it takes a long time for those for that electromagnetic radiation containing information to reach them.
Hmm.
So if
So,
they're 100 light years away, we're not emanating very much. We're just beginning to start, we're just beginning to uh, emanate radio signals.
right.
If you're 200 years away, well, there's a system, but you don't know very much about it.
And I don't know, I don't think either there's know enough about physics to be able to talk about, the whether that information we sent out thins out a bit as it goes and what the implications are. There's that too. But um, anyways, let's say, yes, they're familiar with us. And I hope they would do more than just watch our TV. I hope they'd do a little recon first. So stepping aside, just want to remind folks of my own opinion that I don't think anybody's going to make first contact because I think if you look at us rationally, we're not up for it. But let's assume we are, or that there's some motivations for aliens that override such a decision, such a viewpoint, like again, maybe commercial interests or something. So the aliens are coming to make contact to this system, this global system. So the first question is, who do they contact?
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, do they contact Elon Musk because he's this big technological, and I say this in air quotes, leader? Do they contact somebody like Greta Thunberg, the environmental activist, because she understands it's actually a system?
Hmm.
Do they contact, would they have contacted somebody like Nelson Mandela? Because here's a guy he's a non-governmental actor, but he's had a massive impact on the system itself. So who do they contact? And what they do and how they react to this international system is going to depend a lot on who they contact. So that's a really good point.
Yes, and I think the one thing that the folks you just mentioned have in common is that they all have power. And then we get to that definition of power again, which we don't want to walk down too far, but they all have, even if it's pure social influence, they all have a type of power. So which type of power is going to be the most appealing for the aliens to adjust, approach?
Yeah, my answer is going to sound ridiculous until you think about it, but Santa Claus.
Santa Claus.
First
Yeah,
of
I'm
all,
down with that.
first of all, in segments of our society and broadcast all over the world at the speed of light, radiating out in all directions simultaneously, there's a debate on whether or not Santa Claus is real.
Yeah, you don't think they've drawn a conclusion about that?
I don't think they may not have enough evidence to make the conclusion about that. They may
Yeah, that
decide,
doesn't
look,
work for me.
the idea that Santa Claus is real is so pervasive in media, they might try to find Santa Claus because look at the ability. So when we talk about power, I want to say that a very simple definition of power is ability to influence the operation of the system.
Hmm.
And Santa Claus can definitely do that. He has worldwide monitoring capability. He has the ability to span the entire globe in the period of about 24 hours. And he has the ability to affect the international global economy by his production of goods the children would like.
Hmm.
So I don't think that it's entirely out of possibility that they might be looking for fictional characters.
I do. I do. Just because I think they will have done enough recon. Your assumption is that they're basically depending on these signals and that these signals are the only source of their information about us. And I would assume that the signals would draw attention. And before they would make contact, they would do more recon. And they would certainly, coming from, I assume, developed cultures, nuanced cultures themselves, have some understanding of, at least in primitive peoples, of mythology, of that sort of thing. So
Hmm.
I think that's where we differ. And I've noticed this before the last couple times is I am in the, if they're coming anytime soon, it's because they've been here for a while and they've been checking us out and they've been taking notes and they're going to know. But
So you don't think it's possible that our discovery could resemble actual colonial discoveries on planet Earth?
I don't really.
Well, I mean,
Um,
just hear me out here.
mhm,
So, obviously, technologically, although this can be argued when you talk about Central America, uh, um, arguably, you would probably make the assumption that Western European powers were sufficiently superior in technology compared to the Native American populations in the quote unquote New World uh, to be considered that large a technological leap between us and alien visitors.
I do,
Because
but I think that,
we didn't do any reconnaissance
right.
when we tried to find India, and we didn't do anything about trying to figure out what kind of civilization was there. We just went and took whatever we wanted.
And that might be where I would, because my answer generally is no. I think the rules would be different under just given the nature of the technology and the
So
probably
you don't.
likely cultural history. But I will
So
put in a caveat to that, and the caveat does tie directly to colonialism, and that's that if the aliens are coming specifically with a resource in mind to take advantage of, then I think maybe all bets are off.
Well, yeah, it's definitely going to make a difference whether or not they're friendly or not. But
Mhm.
my point was that so you don't think that any of these species are going to, I mean, any of these extraterrestrials are going to be like Klingons, deeply steeped uh, in a mythology about how the world works.
I have to
even though they
believe
have
they
space
will.
travel.
I think I mean, we've talked about what if with the different kinds of aliens, but
Sure, sure, yeah.
if you pin me down, I don't think they're going to be so parochial. Um, I mean, we're getting into, you know, the line between sort of informed speculative intellectualism and hopes and dreams, which is a tricky twilight zone there. But I feel that they would not be Klingons because Klingons are just too one note. I think they're unrealistically one note, and I think cultures are usually more of an orchestra than one note. How's that for a metaphor? I just came up with that on the spot.
Well, I will note that at least within human history, and this may make it a big difference, is that conquest and countries which turn into empires almost always base that empire, the justification for their exploration is some kind of overarching mythology about the superiority of those cultures.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I don't think that's going to be any different. I think there's kind of an arrogance that comes with a certain level of technological skill where our morality and our ethics are outstripped by our technological prowess. And we don't often see, I think fundamentally humans are not rational. I think fundamentally humans act on instinct and emotion and taking the shortest route possible.
yeah. I'm a
So
behavioralist guy. I'm right there with you. It's a cynical way to live, by God, but I'm there too.
And so I think the idea that they're going to come here and be completely rational about how they approach it might be stretching the truth a little bit, but we don't want to stick to that. So uh, I do think it's really important to look at where do they think power resides because that's going to determine a lot of things. It's not only going to determine who they approach, it's going to determine by and large our response to this contact.
Yeah. Well,
Because
oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that there's another sort of level of the question that you're asking that I would say is a little more supportive of what I'm saying, but
Sure.
I could also see you seeing it completely the opposite way and supporting your point, and that's that what do we get does first contact come from the cultural chauvinists? If we made contact with another species first, it would be the scientists who made contact initially, and the cultural chauvinists would fall in behind because of the nature of our exploration. And those scientists are not necessarily going to come preloaded with that sort of parochial superiority inferiority paradigm built in.
Right.
But it will follow them. It will follow them because that's the way we are. But I wouldn't necessarily assume that the one that we get showing up first is Columbus.
Yeah, not necessarily. That's true.
Yeah.
However, when you said that it would be the scientists making first contact, the first thing that popped into my head was America. I mean, Earth scientists are heavily dependent upon the political system for funding,
Hmm.
and so they might be the first to approach them, but they might not have control over how the response to that contact happens.
Right. There's going to be a trickle effect behind them, and who knows what that sets off.
Well, my point is that uh, the scientists may not have any control about what happens next.
Hmm. Right.
That may depend on their political slash belief system.
Which
And that
makes the point very, very clearly that we're not just talking about first contact with some aliens, with aliens making contact with our system, with our geopolitical system. We're talking about our geopolitical system making contact with theirs.
and
Drop in
that's
the geo,
right.
of course.
And here's where we get into the whole system that I was talking about. as a way of understanding how this contact would happen. So I think a lot of this would depend on what power is distributed like.
Hmm.
If you have a truly dominant superpower like we had probably before the second Iraq War, then uh, our response, the American response to the system, might be the one that defines the overall global response.
Hmm.
Because at the most basic level, if a civilization makes first contact with us, direct first contact with us, um, you can assume that there might be three reactions by any individual player in that system. Oh, yeah, these people are gods. We have to submit to their will. We welcome our alien overlords. Oh, yeah, this doesn't really have any effect on our international system, so we're going to behave as though it doesn't have any effect. And finally, the third one, no, no, we can't have anybody telling us what to do or affecting this system in such a great amount. We're going to oppose them.
This is good because we've been doing a good job of laying, I think, putting out the sort of setting, but now you're going right into actual effect. And I think that's,
Right.
yeah.
And so, what happens if we have what you would call in the international conflict world, the international conflict theory world? What happens if we have a multipolar system where no one country, no one actor is dominant in the system? In the language of political science, what happens if there's no hegemon, nobody who has most of the power? What happens if power is relatively evenly distributed among the main actors? Well,
Mhm.
you're going to have some people that want to go to the overlord side. You're going to have some people, some countries which are so paralyzed by the system that they don't know what to do at all. And you're going to have some countries which are actively resisting it.
Hmm.
And that may be true in other distributions of power where you have two major powers or a single major power. But I can see how it would be much more chaotic in terms of how the terrestrial international system worked if you have lots of different major powers.
So
I
what
can,
happens? Maybe an alien race decides, rather than approach one locus of power, and this gets very complicated. It's all complicated, but let's make it even more complicated. The aliens decide the wise way to do this is to approach multiple locuses, of power. They contact Mandela and Musk and the US government simultaneously.
and Santa Claus.
And Santa Claus, although I still think they'd know
No,
better. But let's
I'm not.
assume that let's put Santa Claus in the list, right?
I'm not completely serious about that, but I do think it's an important point to make because there is debate about the existence of certain. I mean, as an example, because of his impact on the culture, and because there are lots of people who believe he's not dead, they may waste a lot of time looking for Tupac or Elvis.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, you make the point about what are the implications if they get shit wrong. And I feel like this, just to throw back, I think they'll probably weed out some of that information, but not even in my perspective would they necessarily weed out all the information that's
That's
in
right.
play.
That's. I mean, listen, in terms purely on global impact on the economy, they might well try to contact Taylor Swift.
You're right.
I'm not kidding.
That's
When she,
you shouldn't be kidding. That's a very good point.
I mean, there are economic studies on the impact that Taylor Swift has on the national economy when she puts on a tour.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know the studies you're talking about.
And
It was
and
a measurable impact.
and here's another one that's even crazier is what happens if they look at the number of followers on Twitter
That
or
would be interesting.
Instagram?
I mean, that would probably, if they're going to look at that granular a level, they're probably past the Santa Claus stage. But that's a really interesting question. What if they have gotten that granular, and what if that makes sense to them?
Well, I mean, that's going on now in our international system. You
Mhm.
know that sometimes if you're looking for a job in certain media, they won't hire you if you don't have enough social media followers.
Or if you have the wrong social media profile. What if they look
That
at our
too.
social media profiles?
So as an example, I was just looking at I just looked up the top five biggest followers on Instagram. Well, they would land on the field where Portugal was playing in the World Cup because the number one the most followed person on Instagram is the soccer player Cristiano Ronaldo. He has
Hmm.
666 million followers. Number two is, again, a football player, a soccer player. Lionel Messi has 506. Selena Gomez, 405 million. Kylie Jenner, oh God, I hope I don't approach the Jenner sisters first. 382 million followers. And then The Rock, Dwayne Johnson,
Oh, I'm
382
down with
million.
that. Yeah, that's who they should talk to. I mean, he is a Republican, but he's a good Republican. He's a nice guy.
I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. He's Will Wheaton and others now are criticizing his lack of expression of what his beliefs really are.
Yeah, maybe there's an appeal to that as well. Maybe you don't want to be too either partisan or sectarian when you make contact, and maybe someone who is not expressive but is a pure influence, person is
Well,
more appealing.
and I'll give you an example. Uh, let's see how many. Let me find this out first. But let's see. I'm just looking up how many total followers Taylor Swift has on all platforms.
Oh, is that
Okay, so
I'm
she
gonna
has
get it out and help you.
561 million followers. But let's assume she has 150 million followers in the United States alone.
Okay.
Half of those people are probably adults of voting age.
The ones that aren't bots.
What happens if she comes out and says you should vote for candidate X in the American presidential election?
Well, she did that and it didn't
No,
work.
she didn't say you should vote for these people. She specifically avoided saying go out and vote for this person.
Let me just check that because I thought
No,
she
I don't
endorsed
think she's
Kamala
in.
Harris.
No, no, no. There's a difference between endorsing somebody and asking your followers to vote for them. I'm talking about directly asking your followers to vote for a candidate.
Yeah, see, I would argue that's a distinction without a difference, but that's me.
Oh, no, I don't at all
Hmm.
because saying, hey, I support this person is very different than saying you should go out right now and support this person. I think that's what they're talking about, the difference between The Rock and somebody who comes out and makes an actual endorsement and tells people then after the endorsement, you should vote this way too.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I don't think I can draw that distinction quite as easily as you can.
But
Um,
my point is, if 10% of those 75 million people actually do that and vote exactly the way she says, she will determine the outcome of every presidential election after that.
mhm. I don't think
So,
anybody could actually do that, but it would be hugely influential and it could tip the scales. Yeah.
oh, I don't know. I think if Taylor Swift went out there, she would have a major impact on the election. If she actually came out and said, vote for this person, they would do it.
Well, there was a lot of speculation, and it's interesting that you say that this would have been the case if that she had shown up at some campaign events, which she did not. So
Well,
that speaks to your point that she didn't turn out and do any campaigning for Kamala, I don't think.
no, she did not.
So I mean, that speaks again in favor of your point.
I'll give you an example. She did ask her 272 million followers to register to vote.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And she told people to vote, to register at vote.org. She, her pledge resulted, according to vote.org, in more than 35,000 registrations.
That's a good chunk. That's well
She did
done.
not ask them to vote for anyone. She
Mhm.
said, register to vote. Imagine if she had come out and said, you got to vote for this guy
Mhm.
or this woman. I think that she would have had but what I'm saying is her influence on individuals is so large that a fraction of them doing what she asks in a presidential election could well change the game. And so, like I said, social media influencers they might go after. I think you're right to assume that they're going to approach a large number of influencers
Simultaneously.
of all kinds, not just social media influencers, but lots of other different kinds of influencers in the system.
That right there makes it a lot different than a lot of our sci-fi literature that we have as far as who makes contact, where there's usually an individual point of contact, even if and unless it's the um sort of insidious, just in the general sense, nature where they're integrating themselves quietly behind the scenes into society. When you, that type of story notwithstanding, the other types are, it's usually one point of contact. And
Yeah,
so we've already, we are suggesting that that would not be the likely case.
it seems unlikely unless they have some kind of algorithm which is entirely a good, that's entirely a possibility if they're an
Mhm.
advanced society. They may have developed an algorithm which would um, direct us to the most uh, influential person in the international system and might
Mhm.
approach them first. And I'll give you a good example of how we've already done this. There's a political scientist out there. His name is Bruce Bueno de Mesquita, and he has developed a model for predicting international events with 95% or better accuracy 3 to 5 years in the future using only four pieces of information.
Oh,
And
God.
so I'll give you an example of how he's used this, which you can actually talk about because it's not classified. He's done a great deal of work with the American government and in all different kinds of forms. And much of his predictive model results are completely classified and you'll never see them. But so he was asked by the Indian government to try and find a better settlement for the Bhopal disaster in the Union Carbide, where they killed 8 or 9 thousand people by an emission of cyanide gas in a chemical plant.
Right, India.
So there was a very large settlement in the Indian courts with the system, and Carbide said, we really prefer not to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
So can you help us find a way to negotiate down this settlement? And he not only found a lower settlement, which the Indian government would accept than the original settlement, he his model properly identified the right person to approach in the system to get that outcome. And he found a a justice on the Indian Supreme Court that if you convinced him to do it, then the courts would accept the settlement number, which was lower. Now, I don't know if you know anything about negotiations like that in the courts when you're talking about damages, but usually if the first settlement on a case like that is rejected, this next settlement isn't smaller, it's much larger.
Hmm.
Another instance that he was able to predict the right person to talk to was in the early 90s when it became apparent that the North Koreans were on a very steady track to develop nuclear weapons. He identified the right North Korean scientist to get out of the country and convinced to defect to kind of really vastly slow down their nuclear program.
Hmm. Yeah.
So indeed, the aliens may be smart enough to pick the exact right person who has an influence on the international system, which is broad enough to convince Americans to react a certain way.
Although I think we were more correct when we talked about the idea of not having one point of contact.
Oh, well, in
Yeah, I
fact,
think we were more right there.
well, yeah, I think my idea just bears that out.
Uh-huh.
They would use the that information to identify multiple contacts to approach simultaneously to
Hmm.
get maximum benefit out of their contact. So I think it's really important to try and examine who they might look at and who they might approach and how they might approach that. Because as we talked about with institutions, I do think that the right kind and number of people would make a smooth contact from whatever kind of motivation they might have easier. And so I think that if you find the right person or persons, whatever your motivation for contacting humans uh, is going to that's going to ease that actual goal.
Yeah,
And now I think we've made a good transition to what's their motive.
we have. There's one more piece of this logistical angle I'd like to touch on
Sure, of
first.
course.
Because we have been talking the logistics, and then we start talking about their angle is the next place to go. But just without getting into it too much, I think when you talk about first contact, you do have to go back to the conspiracy theories. The idea that we've already made first contact, that either intentionally or more often the conspiracy theory is that they've been looking at us, but they screw up and they crash sometimes. And maybe we get some of their technology and it leads to technological leaps like transistors or something. What are the problems? I think that's a problematic approach. It's interesting if you step back and look at it without that sort of bias against the conspiracy theories. I think it's actually kind of an interesting theory, but I don't think it holds up.
No,
S-
it's an interesting hypothesis, but as you said, there are a couple of different reasons why that doesn't work.
Uh-huh.
One is the inverse square law of conspiracy that we talked about last time.
Sure.
That the more people, this would be a massive global conspiracy.
Yeah.
There would be hundreds of thousands of people who know this, and definitive evidence of this would come out.
Yeah. Which, of course, the theorists would say has come out. I'm just being devil's advocate here a little
Oh
bit
no, I
because I don't
understand. I
think it
understand
works
that.
either.
I understand that. But has it really?
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, has it really? And this leads us to my second thing that I was going to talk about in regard to this is the way you have to measure the ability of theories to explain what's going on is evidence.
Right.
What evidence do we have that governments already have made technological leaps?
Right. And does the
None.
evidence stand up to scrutiny? I mean, there's a lot of things you can call evidence. You can talk about evidence to support intelligent design, but does it stand up when you
Right.
really look
And,
at it? And
and
that's
so
the
so
problem.
so I want to introduce some more of my background, and let's talk about how you know one theory replaces another. Now, I have to qualify this because most people, when they say the word theory, what they really mean in scientific inquiry in the whole field of epistemology is not theory. Theory is a set of related propositions over a wide number of dimensions, which have been uh, proposed, tested, retested, and retested again,
Hmm.
which are linked in a logical way, which has to be the most simple explanation of the phenomena you can find, not simple, but the least complicated, the least convoluted.
Sure, the shortest distance between 2 points and all.
Right. But the point here is that when most people think of theory, they're really thinking about hypothesis. It's a single idea that you test.
Well, they
A
really are, aren't they? That's a good point.
Yes, they're thinking of the word hypothesis, not theory.
Yeah, I never really
Um,
thought about that.
it, it's a theory is a series of hypotheses that have been tested and retested and retested and retested to the point to where you find, say, the scientific uh, standard for confirmation of a hypothesis is a 95% likelihood
Mhm.
in a random distribution. And so the theory of evolution is a large number of hypotheses which have been tested and retested, which are then linked logically in the most parsimonious way possible. And that's the word I like, parsimonious, that I haven't been able to think of for several weeks. Parsimonious way. That is the simplest possible way to arrive at your answer. So evolution isn't a single idea. It's the culmination of many, many hypotheses which have been confirmed many, many times, and for which there is overwhelming evidence these hypotheses work. That's
Sure.
the first part of it. The
Yeah.
next part of it is you have to find a logical thread that links all of these hypotheses together that's used to make a scientific conclusion.
And that leads you to natural selection.
That's right. And so this is a much getting to an actual scientific theory is much more difficult than saying, well, the government is hiding things from us. That's a
Mhm.
hypothesis. That's not a theory.
Right, right. I
So
mean,
it's a
I want to be fair. Some of them do have theories, but many of them do not, and a lot of them stop right there.
right.
But I do want to be fair. And, I want to say this is going to lose me a lot of respect from folks. I try very hard to be open to the idea that the conspiracy theorists are correct. I don't want to. It's the same way I am with believing in God. It's like I want to be agnostic. So I try very hard to be agnostic. So about everything.
Well,
Just in case. I mean, granted, with the God thing, it would take a road to Damascus moment. So I guess with the UFO thing or the alien thing, it would take something equivalent with
yeah,
God stuff.
it's
Yeah.
going to take a confirmation of a lot of hypotheses
Yeah.
all strung together logically for me to believe that they're already here. They've already made contact, and government is hiding it. But my point is this: how do you know when one theory replaces another? How do you know when one set of logically connected, confirmed hypotheses is better than another one? And so we're going to look at what I think is probably the most developed conspiracy theory, and that's John F. Kennedy's assassination.
Certainly been developed in a lot of it's its own system at this point.
So let's talk about how you know the two big theoretical ideas is that there was a conspiracy and there was one shooter.
Hmm.
Now, keep in mind that for this is called Lakatos theory of the Lakatos criteria of inclusion. And Lakatos criteria of inclusion is one of the most important ways in which scientists determine which theory is superior to another. So this is what Lakatos criterion of inclusion uh, says. It says for theory A to replace theory B, theory A must provide all of the answers that theory B has, plus information which theory B cannot explain, and do it in a way which is more parsimonious, which is more elegant, which
Sure.
takes fewer propositions to explain.
I'm glad you have that because I wanted to sort of babble into something like that, but you've got it nice and clean. I appreciate that.
Well, it's not me.
Yeah.
It's this natural philosopher, which is
Yeah,
what you
but you would have gotten it. You would have babbled your way into it too. That's not too that's pretty straightforward. That's where we get
well,
the philosophers to write things down in nice, clean, bite-sized ways so that we don't have to bungle our way through it, right?
well, my deal is this. If you're using somebody else's information, you got to be as clear as possible. And so that's the whole reason why I'm doing that. This is not my idea. It's really important to attribute original thought
Oh,
to the
I
people
know.
who had the original thought.
Give yourself credit though. You would have come up with it.
Well, maybe. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make here is in that test, if you apply Lakatos criterion of inclusion, the multiple shooter theory completely falls apart. Completely falls apart. Because what a lot of the people who advocate for the multiple shooter conspiracy say is, well, I have these questions which the single shooter theory, the single gunman theory can't answer.
Yeah.
But in order for the multiple gunman theory to be better, it has to answer all of those questions. It can't just say, well, you can't answer these questions. You
Right.
can't just find holes in the theory and say your theory's better.
Right. Which, oh,
You have to actually plug those holes and add information which the single gunman theory can't.
you have to assert something.
Well, and you have to show evidence it's true.
Yeah. But at the most basic, there has to be a positive assertion there.
That's right. There has to be something which you do, which the multiple gunman theory explains, which the single gunman theory can't explain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it fails. It fails every single time. And this is the problem with conspiracy theories.
Hmm.
The fact is,
There's a real sort of natural selection to conspiracy theories. I mean, you're right. The most developed one is the Kennedy conspiracy theory, but it has begun the process of withering on the vine and dying with the passing of that generation of the as the baby boomers age out, so is that conspiracy theory. And I think you're right. I think that's as far as they get. And I think it's a
yes.
very developed one, but I think we're seeing it wither away.
Well, I think there's another one which is even more developed. And
Oh.
yeah, it's the we didn't land on the moon theory.
You think I see, I feel that like that one's a sort of I was gonna say secondary one, but even a tertiary one.
Well, I mean, it's so freaking lutely clear. Boy, if you apply even the slightest amount of scientific inquiry, if you apply simple basic logic to that one, it explodes.
Yeah, see,
It explodes.
I don't think more than a handful of people that are just a matter of there are so many people in the world, some people will believe anything. I don't think beyond that sort of basic
Oh no,
value that
it's
you've
much
got
bigger than you.
to.
It's much bigger than you think.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
unfortunately, it is. It is much bigger than you think. And then
I'll
there's
take
another
your
one I
word
think
for
which
it.
ranks up there is, and that's the flat Earth theory. Never mind that, it was it was definitively shown using sticks and shadows
Oh, I know.
and mathematics 4,000 years ago.
Even Kyrie Irving has dumped that though.
Well, yeah, but what about Terrence Howard?
Really?
Oh no, Terrence Howard has had this huge debate with people like Michael deGrasse Tyson.
Wow.
I mean, he doesn't even really believe that one plus one is two. He thinks you can't prove that, which is hilarious because Bertrand Russell wrote a whole book which was a
God.
proof about how one and one equals two.
Postmodern physics. We've got a whole new
Yeah,
classification
it's
here.
post-truth physics, that's for
Yeah.
sure. But we've kind of fallen off the ways a
Yeah,
little
it's
bit.
true. We're kind of off
We can circle back quite easily. The thing here is what's happened is we are definitely in a situation where people believe something that's not true, that there's already massive contact and we've recovered bodies and
Yeah.
we've developed technology and this gets into why people subscribe to conspiracy theories. If
Yeah,
there are,
I oh go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, this is would seem to be kind of a digression, but we've only danced around it the last couple episodes, and I think in this context, since we're talking about first contact with the government, with a power center, like this
Oh,
in the
sure. Yeah,
geopolitical thing.
absolutely.
I think it's been worth talking about. So I am glad we spent a little time on it.
Yeah. But my point is, if that were true, we would already know this. We would already know this. I mean,
Mhm.
I do think there's evidence that the government knows something, but certainly not to the degree that we're talking about with the movie Disclosure Day.
Mhm.
I mean, I think there are things the government has seen which defy uh, explanation scientifically, but that doesn't mean that uh, uh, Donald Trump and Barack Obama have been getting information and designing technology uh, and implementing technology, and we don't know it.
Hey,
And I don't really believe that we have alien bodies, uh, that we've dissected from crashes.
great.
But anyway,
Anyway,
uh,
60-second digression though, just so to completely destroy any respect you might have left for me. I had
sure.
an opportunity yesterday to see Disclosure Day. You know what I did instead?
What?
Come on, give me a guess.
I don't have any idea.
I saw Supergirl instead.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm dying to see it though. I love
It's
Millie
not
Alcock,
as
and
bad as everybody says. It's
no, I'm sure
really
it's
not.
not. It never is. Uh, I love Millie Alcock.
I
Uh,
do too.
I think she's a really good actress, and I think I think she's getting some superhero genre fatigue hate here.
I
Um,
agree. Well, no, people seem to like her. The critics do seem to say positive things about her, and then full stop, then they're not interested. But people do appreciate her, so hopefully her career will continue and not be stained forever.
so here's the thing that I have the question. No, she's too good an actress for that to happen. I think I really do think she's too good an actress for that to happen. If you saw her in the first couple of seasons or the first season of oh, what is it? It's the
The House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
She is so good in that.
Yeah, she was amazing. I was disappointed when we moved from her and they grew up and we didn't get to see her
Yeah.
anymore on the
Millie
screen.
Alcock, she is a ridiculously underestimated uh actress.
Yeah,
She
it'll
is
be criminal if she
terrific.
doesn't end up with an Oscar for something someday.
Oh no, I agree. You put her in the right role, she's going to win that easy.
Yeah.
Um, but
Anyway,
so my only question is Jason Momoa as good a Lobo as you
yes.
think he would be?
Yes. Yes.
I'm
He
glad
is
because that's the real role he's been trying to get for a very long time. At
yes.
least as long
No.
as Channing Tatum's tried to be
Gambit. Yeah.
Gambit. Yeah.
No, I mean he's right there with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine,
Oh,
height
I'm so glad to
notwithstanding.
hear that.
Yeah. No, he's you wish you got more of him. He's
Yeah.
perfect. He looks perfect. Everything about him is I mean the camera they had the eye for how to frame him to make him look like Maximum Lobo. He's great.
Yeah, so that's good. And the thing we were talking about Millie Alcock and getting stained, I will go see a movie where I know the actor is really great, despite whatever people say about that particular movie.
Hmm.
If I know there's a really good actor in a movie, I will entirely uh, blow off whatever the press and the critics and the commenters are saying, and I'll see it. So I
Well,
don't mess around with that. But
well,
and so
I've taken us so far off the track here. I
yeah,
apologize.
we can get back easily. So when we talk about the international system and its response, I think what kind of power we have is going to make a big difference. If you have a system where there's only one superpower, and they start to, um, they cooperate uh, with this new extraterrestrial organization, then I think it might be easier for the rest of the international system to follow along.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think if you have a multiple system, you're going to have crazy chaos because some countries are going to see, hey, as an example, so let's say you have a bipolar system where, like we may have in a couple of decades, provided the Chinese population problem doesn't explode.
That's what they give me drugs for, my bipolar system. Did
So
I just give away too much information? There you go.
that's for the audience to decide. So I think in a bipolar system, you have a lot bigger chance of chaos. In fact, if I were still in academia, I would write a paper about this. Which kind of polar system, which kind of distribution of power in an international system would be more likely to result in uh, a war against uh, extraterrestrials? Um, but the thing is, if you have a bipolar system where you've got one rising power and one power that's been the hegemon for a long time, well, would the would the power which is rising be more likely to side with the invaders in
Mhm.
hopes that siding with the invaders would give them the edge in the competition for global power?
Yeah.
Would the and so there you might end up in a situation where you've got this massive war for control, and the person who's able to get um, the other power to intervene on their behalf might win. But then, of course, uh, what's going to be the cost of that cooperation, or what's going to be the cost of that technological change?
Mhm.
So I think that's another thing to think about. Um, what happens if you have a system where there's a multipolar power
Right.
distribution?
Yeah.
Um, which side, I mean, would any side deciding to cooperate with the aliens have any effect on the overall distribution of power and what the international system looks like? Would we have no chance of surviving in a current power system? It's
Hmm.
possible that it wouldn't matter what I mean, the extraterrestrials may be so powerful that there is no real way to overcome the invader. Um,
Yeah. The
would
invader
it
scenario. Right.
would it work the way the British colonial system did? Um, the, if you look at the resources and the geography of England and Great Britain,
Hmm.
there is no reason to expect it would ever become an empire as large as it was and last as long as it did. They don't have the resources. They don't have the potential economy to do it. How were they able to do that? Well, it worked like this. You go in and you establish colonies and you find the biggest, most important power or the regional power which has the most potential, and you tell them, look, we can kill you or you can work with us. What do you want to do? And then the people who see an opportunity to dominate the local system, they back the British and they get technology and they get money and but then they have to do certain things in response.
Yeah.
So would it work like that, where the the uh, the local power, which has the most to benefit from cooperating with the uh, uh, the 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 extraterrestrial civilization, would they then become the dominant power on Earth?
Right.
As an example, if your aliens have discovered a way to get emission-free energy, which basically doesn't cost you anything,
Right.
if you can generate unlimited power at the lowest possible uh, cost with the least amount of damage to the environment, the first power able to develop energy based on water you draw from the air, which has the level of energy output that petroleum does,
Yeah.
they win.
Yeah.
They will dominate technology. They'll become the most important power on the planet. What happens if the aliens already have that? And they say, well, if you do our bidding, we'll give it to you.
Right. Right. And then you're this is the invader scenario that I think is a lot. probably a lot more likely than Independence Day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, completely taking over a planet is really kind of, even if you have interstellar travel, that's a very, very complex, large number of problems to solve.
Yeah. The Independence Day scenario is easy. Right.
Yeah.
Let's get it out there. You if you're coming in to blow shit up and you want to conquer, you cut off the head of the snake, you go for the political and military leadership, and then you come in and you sweep up after them. But what you're talking about is much more about control than chaos.
Well,
That
and the
you
other thing is this, the Independence Day model costs you a lot more money.
probably does, yeah.
It's much easier to go in and convince another regional power to do all your dirty work and then provide them with money and technology to do it.
Well, and it's much more easy to co-opt institutions than wreck the ones that are there and rebuild more from scratch. Even if you're just importing your own, that's a heavy lift.
Absolutely. So that doesn't seem, the Independence Day approach doesn't seem likely
Right.
unless you're
I
so
agree.
well developed, it's something you do easily.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is going to depend on the 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 quantum difference in technological development.
Yeah. I mean,
If there,
the only scenario that I would wonder about would be to sort of harken back to your colonial Terran colonial scenario, Western colonial scenario, where the conquest of the New World was made so much easier by smallpox
yeah,
that you could have a scenario where something like that is done intentionally.
yeah.
But that's the only exception to the, I mean, that's a more sophisticated version of the Independence Day scenario, but not one that I would
Well,
completely
yeah, and the
check
most
out.
the Wrath of Khan provides the easiest solution. If you could develop the technology to just send out a probe and then have it completely destroy all life on that planet and replace it with new life.
Yeah,
If you had the Genesis probe,
yeah.
you could conquer the entire galaxy
Well, sure, yeah, that's for sure.
because then nobody. Well, I think that's important. I think that's the point that that movie is making is that they're trying to make sure that, they're telling you if you have this capability, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, that really is what the danger of the Genesis project is. You could come in and wipe out entire civilizations with one shot.
yeah.
So, but anyway, I think that has a lot to do with what would happen and how the international system reacts. It, and you talked about the political and military stuff. Even that, even if you come in and you wipe out the political and military stuff, all you need is a set of religious leaders who say, "Well, here's the deal. They've come and they've killed all our military and political stuff, but God commands you drive this invader away. This is a test by God.
Yeah.
You're the chosen people, and the reason why he sent these people to you is for you to prove that." The only way the only way you can get out of that situation is to set off religion and make this a holy war.
Yeah, yeah, which there's a
Because
lot of
mobilization,
versions. There's a
I
lot of
mean,
versions of this where that could happen.
yeah, yes, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And this goes back to religion and culture.
Yeah, yeah, we brushed on it for sure.
So
Or
I think
just
I think
brushed
we've
on it, we got into it.
well, and the thing is, I think the thing you should come away with that our listeners should come away with here is that movies notwithstanding, this is a very complicated, very uh, granulated kind of idea.
It's true.
The movies and even science fiction novels don't begin to scratch the surface
Right.
on how many factors that an invasion or that contact doesn't even have to be an invasion. It could be friendly contact with a society that has conquered interstellar travel could be.
Yeah.
This is a super complex thing, and what happens and how it happens depends on the interaction of millions of people, hundreds of thousands of institutions, uh, and multiple systems. The international system isn't just political, it's economic, it's cultural, it's philosophical. I mean, we're talking about a complete rewriting of all of these systems. This is like you hear people like on both extremes of uh, the political spectrum these days saying, well, the system's all screwed up. We need to have revolution. No, 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 we don't. The people who are now calling for revolution don't, they think, well, we can just radically change the political system. No, a revolution changes all of the systems, wipes them all out permanently, and replaces them with new ones.
Mm,
You don't want revolution, not if you don't want millions of people to die and chaos and famine. You don't want revolution. What you want is extreme reform, but you
right.
definitely do not want revolution. Stop talking about it.
Yes,
It's a
the so
bad
many of the
idea.
revolutionaries ironically embrace the philosophy of acceptable casualties on a large level, and that's not the point.
No, that's exactly the opposite point.
Yeah.
This is also the funny thing you hear extreme conservatives saying, "Yeah, let's have a civil war again. The South will win." It's like, okay, guys, it was country boys versus city boys the first time, and you didn't like the result. And I guarantee you, it's going to be the same thing too. And then they're saying, "Yeah, but we have all the guns." That's assuming that liberals don't own guns.
Yeah.
Oh, terrible assumption.
Yeah.
And it's also ignoring the logistical and industrial base.
The
That,
industrial base. I was about to say that, right?
well, it's not just industry, it's also logistics.
Hmm.
And, there's a saying out there that when you talk about military history or military strategy um, or winning a war, the amateurs talk about strategy and the professionals talk about logistics.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what people don't understand is the reason why we couldn't win a war against a very sparsely populated, very low tech country like Afghanistan simply is mostly logistics. Their supply system is right there, it's local. Our supply system is 10,000 miles long.
I
And so,
really appreciate that what you're saying, what you were saying a moment ago, really brought us full circle. This is complex. This is not when we talk about first contact and we see first contact spoken of, it's always in the service of a plot. It's always in the
yep,
service of a story people want to tell. And the reality is
doesn't match up.
much more complex.
Yeah. And what that means is, and that's bad news for the conspiracy theorists too.
It's true because they're telling stories.
Yeah. And it's a very simple argument
Hmm. Hmm.
in a situation which is incredibly complex,
Yeah.
incredibly complex. I mean, to really measure this, hate to say it, you need a very complex mathematical model.
Yeah.
And we now have I think we now have the computational power to model this, but do we have the minds necessary to do that?
Right. Well, like I say, I'm such a behavioralist. I'm with you on that. It's math.
Yeah, it's math. This is a very complicated mathematical model to really understand what those kinds of effects would be. And that sounds like something that probably Elon Musk would, uh, that would be a better project for him than many of the
Right.
projects he has.
It ain't the theory of everything, but it's the theory of everything that matters.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize just how complex it is, which makes the movies fun because it distills all that stuff down to complex. But when we get around to it, these conspiracy theories are just fiction,
Yeah.
and it's mainly because of the complexity of what would happen.
They're plots. Yeah.
It's not simple. It's
Mhm.
not simple at all. And so making a simple movie where, and this goes to your point about the difference between our technology and alien technology and the whole thing about writing a computer virus. You know,
From a
that
previous
was
one, yeah.
that's a plot device which is used for as a reference to War of the Worlds. So instead of an actual physical violence,
Virus, yeah.
physical virus,
Right,
it was a computer virus.
right.
So, of course, it would have been a much better movie, I think, if they had just been, uh, um, you know, Will Smith coughing on one of them.
Yeah, that would have been a story we've seen before, though. They didn't want that. But anyways. So this has been great. This is, I think, we've talked about this over 3 episodes, and this one feels like the most relevant and thorough conversation we've had, honestly, which is
Well,
not to dismiss the others, but we've covered a lot of ground here, and I think we've made the point well, details notwithstanding, where that this ain't simple. This ain't
no,
simple.
but I think it also ties together the other two episodes with this one.
Yeah,
I
it
think
really
this
does.
synthesizes the whole thing.
I think
This
you're
is a
right.
very this is a very complex thing, and unless you've got a mathematical model which can explain how this has already happened, it ain't happened, folks.
Yeah.
There is not. There may be some attempts to contact us, but let me just tell you, it is definitely not being hidden from anybody. There is no
Yeah.
alien technology uh, uh, giving Americans an advantage. That's just industry.
Yeah. And I will still say, as I do all the time with this conversation, I don't think it's happened. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen in our children's lifetime or our grandchildren's lifetime.
Yeah, I think this
Hopefully,
is
things look better a little farther on.
well. But I also think I'm much more inclined to believe in the dark forest theory.
Right.
Uh,
Which we've talked about, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it just says that the reason why we don't have any contact with other alien races is they're afraid that we'll kill them, or
Mhm.
they're afraid that even if they make contact with a lesser civilization, then they'll give themselves away to an even bigger civilization than they are. So they don't want to signal to their predators that they're there.
Yeah, unless they do the day the earth stood still and show up, where one guy shows up to say, no, no, chill out, because those guys up there, they're all about to say, fuck you, and just smack you down. And, that would be the other side is
Yeah,
we don't
yeah,
want to make contact because they don't like us.
right, right, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I really love that movie because it's really the humans who are the bad guys.
Oh, I do too. I think it's the closest to First Contact I can believe of any of the movies out there. I love it.
Yeah.
Well,
So
anyways, we should
I think
probably
we've
wrap
covered
this up.
this subject pretty well in 3 episodes.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
but the thing is that the best part for us is this topic is so complex that we can come back to it and do an hour on it anytime.
Anytime. This is a semester. You could have an entire college course on this and still not finish.
Yeah.
All right, folks. It's been a blast. Next week, we move back into something else, and we no longer have the podcast dedicated to the one topic. And we'll probably go a little lighter and just have some fun because it's time we just did something goofy. And I know
Yep.
that what's next coming up is a little goofy. So we'll see you all next week or next time.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Our theme music is by Christopher Piatek.